So what is going on, guys? I am Black Ops Amazing. Welcome back to another video where what I wanted to do today was take a look at what Cold War Zombies could have ended up looking like, what the pre-alpha version of the game included, some things that Treyarch intended to be in the game but eventually took out for whatever reason, because I'll admit, having looked over this gameplay, I think some things from the early build of this game were better than what we got upon release. I'm not exactly sure when this build of the game would have been around, when the pre-alpha of a game is. Black Ops Cold War of course came out in 2020. It looks pretty late on, but I thought this was interesting enough to talk about in a video, because we've seen concepts of what Black Ops 1 zombies could have ended up looking like. We've seen concepts of what certain Black Ops 3 maps such as Shadows of Evil might have ended up looking like. We've seen those transit concepts which look really cool, and again in some cases better than the actual version of the game we got. And so taking a look at the pre-alpha build of Cold War Zombies gives us an idea of what this game might have looked like if Treyarch didn't continue to change things. So anyway, since I can't access this for myself, a couple of people over on YouTube have uploaded footage of the pre-alpha version of Cold War, so we're going to take a look at their footage to see these differences. I will link both of their channels down in the description, who are Axio and DL10, I think I've pronounced that correctly. But the first big thing that was pointed out was in the pre-alpha build of Cold War Zombies menu, there were modes here that were never there upon release. So we had the traditional round-based, but also Rush, TCM, Gauntlet, Tutorial, Outbreak, and Onslaught. Now, round-based, of course, is the standard zombies. Rush was a game mode from Black Ops 4. It's interesting to see it in the pre-alpha build of the menu for Cold War Zombies. I'll explain why this might be here in just a second, but there's also TCM. Gauntlet is there as well, along with Outbreak and Onslaught. This is super interesting because Outbreak, of course, didn't release until I think it was Season 1. I could be wrong, but it was early on in Cold War's life cycle. It didn't come upon release though. So to know that Treyarch were intended to have Outbreak in the game, even in the pre-alpha build, tells us it was always intended to come into Cold War. It wasn't a later thought. They just must not have had it ready for release. So it came later on. And as for the other modes, Rush, Gauntlet being Black Ops 4 Zombies modes, as you'll also see as we take a look on through this build of the game, a lot of what you will witness are assets from Black Ops 4. One other thing that's also worth pointing out is a lot of what you will see will simply just be placeholders. So this doesn't necessarily mean that Treyarch were ever intending to add Rush into Cold War. It simply could have just been a placeholder for something else. But what this does tell us is a lot of what Treyarch were working upon in Cold War originates from Black Ops 4. Cold War Zombies was built upon Black Ops 4 Zombies, and that's even more obvious when you realise in this build of the game, you also had the ability, like Black Ops 4, to edit your game rules. So in BO4 it was custom mutations, but a lot of those same settings were in the alpha build of Cold War, where you could either turn crawlers on or off, change the speed of the zombies, increase health, increase damage. This feature was only available in Black Ops 4, and it was also in the pre-alpha build of Cold War. Again, more evidence that Cold War Zombies was built upon Black Ops 4. Do I think this means Treyarch were ever intending to put custom game rules into Cold War Zombies? Potentially, because this isn't exactly the same as BO4. This isn't a placeholder. It looks like Treyarch were intending to put a smaller condensed custom mutations into Cold War Zombies. And to be honest, just because Cold War Zombies is so much easier than Black Ops 4, that was one of the things I used custom mutations for in that game, just to make the game more enjoyable whenever I wanted to relax. But because Cold War Zombies is extremely easy as it is, I don't really think something like this was necessary. Also in the pre-alpha build, you could upgrade all of your field upgrades and perks to level 5. Now, unless I'm remembering incorrectly, upon release you could only upgrade everything to level 3. It wasn't until later on where level 5 or level V got added in. So if I'm right in saying, in the pre-alpha build, Treyarch had 5 levels to your perk skills. However, in the release version, we only got 3 for some reason. Maybe they just weren't ready, or there's some other excuse, I don't know. But you can tell just looking at those upgrades, as you would expect, they are very basic compared to what we actually got when it finally released. Now, one thing that I love, which I definitely think is a placeholder, is in the pre-alpha build there was the original round change sound. I think this was just a placeholder, but I wouldn't have complained if they just stuck with this in Cold War. And if you listen to the voice of the announcers whenever you pick up power-ups such as a max ammo or an insta-kill, you will notice that it isn't the Forsaken talking like we normally hear, it is Samantha, and in some cases, even Richtofen. Insta So in the pre-alpha build of Cold War, the announcer quotes were from Samantha and Richtofen when they were in charge of the zombies in the older games, compared to the deep voice of the Forsaken. Again, I wouldn't have minded this, but lore-wise it would have brought up a lot more questions. It wouldn't have made sense for the storyline, so this was really something Treyarch had to change, and they did. So I'm assuming Samantha's voice as the announcer was just a placeholder, until Treyarch added in the Forsaken's voice later on before the game went gold. Now, the location of a few perk machines was also changed for the final release version of the game. So Stamina was still in this same building, but was moved to the left slightly behind this pillar. I can see why Treyarch changed it. It is a little bit of a weird position. Instead, they moved it up against the wall, and they also switched out the positions of Juggernog and Deadshot. So instead, we have Deadshot upstairs in the big training area, and Juggernog is downstairs in this little area. I mean, it doesn't really make a difference to me where these perk machines are located. I guess it makes a little bit more sense that Juggernog is closer to spawn. But yeah, I suppose that's just a little bit of a quality of life improvement. I would be interested to know why Treyarch actually decided to change these locations, because I can't see that big of a difference. If it was me, I would have been like, okay, yeah, we'll just leave it there. The one thing that I kind of wish Treyarch didn't change and kept the same as the pre-alpha build was the skybox when you're in the Dark Aether. Because take a look at how colourful and magical this version of it looked. There's so much more colour in the sky, blues, purples, it looks like a galaxy in a way. I just think this is a really cool looking skybox, and then you compare that to what we have in the game now. Treyarch toned it down massively, and I'm not really sure why. Perhaps this final version of it looks a bit more realistic, whereas the pre-alpha build one looked more like an image, but that really wasn't the case. You can still see the jellyfish in the sky, movement, flashing lights. It looks super cool. So the fact that Treyarch changed this kind of bums me out, because this looks amazing, whereas the release version of it is still nice, but it's not as cool as this. I honestly can't think of a reason why Treyarch decided to change it. Perhaps they thought it was too over the top. I'm trying to think of another excuse, but nothing I'm coming up with is valid. Yeah, this one's a real bummer. The pre-alpha version of the Dark Aether skybox was so much better. Die Maschine also had the original power switch, and that's all there was, whereas now you switch on the power in the main center, and then you also press the two buttons either side of the cyclotron as well. There was just the one singular OG switch in the pre-alpha build. Deadshot Daiquiri had its abilities changed slightly. I will admit this is probably one of the best perks in the game, but the pre-alpha build version of it made it so that your gun had 0 bullet spread and 100% accuracy. You can see how tight the crosshairs are, so wherever you point your weapon, that's where it fires. No matter if you're firing a shotgun, an assault rifle, Deadshot gave you 100% accuracy, which I guess is a little bit OP perhaps, but I still think the version of it that we have now and how much damage it does to armored zombies still makes it one of the best perks, especially compared to the old days where it was, well, pretty crap. And finally, a few other things. Another one that I'm bummed out about is up on exfil, you know how you now just get in the chopper and then fly away. It's a pretty boring ending, but in the pre-alpha build, when you got in the exfil chopper, you also had access to a minigun, so you could continue to shoot the zombies on the ground as you flew away. Now, this wouldn't work in the current exfil system because you have to kill all the zombies in the area before you can exfil, so if you got in the chopper and then had access to the minigun, well, there'd be no zombies to shoot on the ground. But I think this was an epic idea, allowing you to have access to a minigun on the chopper as you exfilled, and instead of having to kill all of the zombies in the area, you just had to exfil before the time limit. Two other things they changed were the armor station. The location of it on Die Maschine was moved upstairs, and also it didn't include the ability to upgrade the rarity of your weapons. You could only upgrade your armor, and the price of Pack-a-Punching was also cheaper in the pre-alpha build as well. So the price of tier 1 Pack-a-Punch was 5,000 points, which is normal, but the price of tier 2 was 7,500 instead of, I think it's 15,000, and then the price of tier 3 Pack-a-Punch was 10,000 instead of 30,000. That tier 3 pap is a lot of money. If you play long enough, you can get it, but when you want to buy perks as well, it's an expensive upgrade, so the pre-alpha version of it was definitely cheaper. And it's the same for ammo mods. They cost just 1,000 points in the pre-alpha build, and besides from that, those were pretty much all of the major interesting changes between the early version of Cold War Zombies and the release version. The only map that we had to go off was Die Maschine. The layout was pretty much the same. They just added in a few extra rocks here and there to make training areas a bit smaller, to make the map harder, and the Megaton was easier to kill in the pre-alpha build, but it's not that hard anyway. But yeah, that's how the early build of Cold War Zombies compared to the version we got. Besides from the Dark Ether skybox, which they definitely should have kept, and perhaps the exfil having access to a minigun, and maybe the price of the Pack-a-Punch system, I think every other change is valid. But it's always interesting to take a look and see what Treyarch changed, so there we go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Are you glad this wasn't the build we got, or are there some things in here that you wish stayed? Make sure that you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest videos on the channel. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.